massive fluctuation of immigration from India shortly after the Golden Temple attack. In the late 80s, the Golden Temple attack happened in 84. Shortly thereafter, you'll notice there was a massive migration of Southeast Asians coming from India in the late 80s and early 90s. And so they were coming to Canada, they were settling here, they were trying to become financially independent and stable. But while they were busy at work, their children were also adjusting to a Western style of life in school. So reconciling and finding that balance between their culture, their values, their traditions versus Western culture. So there was obviously a lot of challenges that came with that. And part of that was having to deal with racism. There was a significant amount of racism back in the day as well. So what ended up happening is the South Asians would band together in little gangs to protect one another from all the racism was happening. But unfortunately, that gradually escalated from just insulating and protecting one another as a defensive tactic to becoming more of a threat and intimidation and use of violence as a tool to make money selling drugs. And they realized how lucrative it was. So that's where the real start was. And the real dawn of gangsterism here, so to speak, was Bindi Johal and the Dosanjh brothers. And so that cycle was in the early 90s. And there was multiple homicides that came as a result of that. And you could say that was truly the beginning of South Asian gang crime in North America.
Today, in Canada, at least, Canadian Punjabi or South Asian gangsters, they form a significant, they control a significant portion of, say, territories or even the trade. Could you elaborate on the kind of activities they've engaged in?
Everything you could possibly imagine. Drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, extortions, robberies, kidnappings, prostitution, you name it. Like, it is unbelievable. The spectrum of crime that these individuals are involved in. But primarily what we're noticing is the South Asians are involved in the drug trafficking business.
So, see, South Asians have for a long time been termed as a model immigrant community. We're known for having the highest rates of education. A lot of professionals hail from the community. And this is across the globe. What is the effect of, on the community with regard to the rise of this phenomena? How has the community responded?
I'll be very honest with you. I'm very disappointed. I really am. The South Asian community as a whole, they don't work together. I'll say that right out, because as the South Asian community is all about sweeping it underneath the rug, pretending it doesn't exist. It's blind denial. It's the ostrich with the head in the sand approach. And secondly, unlike India, where we grew up in villages, and it goes back to that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, where we all helped out. Here, everybody minds their own business. So if some kid is involved in drugs or gangs, everybody takes the attitude, it's not our problem, right? It's that families, that parents, their responsibility, their problem, they can deal with it. And that's the most disappointing aspect of all this, is that my work in the community has primarily been centered on that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, where I firmly believe in all of us working together in collaboration and in partnership to keep kids on the right track. Just because it's somebody else's child doesn't mean it's not our responsibility as a whole, as a community. And I believe that's where the South Asian community needs to stand together in order to protect our kids from going into that lifestyle.
What are the connections of how do you see an impact? So from my perspective, today I am sitting in Patiala in Punjab, and what is fascinating to me is that Punjabis in India, in any way, they're stereotyped as having a globalist perspective. People in the Punjab in India, they don't just think of Punjab, they'll think of, going abroad, they'll think of having businesses across the globe. How have you seen connections? Do you see any connections between, say, the Canadian Punjabi underworld in Canada and the heartland in Indian Punjab? Have you seen any connections over the years?
Oh, of course. Of course. Multiple connections. What you have to understand that not many, but some of those that choose to immigrate to Canada have a significant amount of criminal history and affiliation back in India. They're involved in that lifestyle over there, where they're involved in drug trafficking. They're involved in that lifestyle. They see it as easy money. And when they get their immigration to Canada, because their records were clean and they end up moving to Canada, Canada simply becomes a safe haven for them, where then they end up conducting their drug business here as well. In terms of the nexus between India and Canada, I'll give you a perfect example. There was kids that were born here. When I say kids, they were in their early 20s. They were gangsters, South Asian. So in Canada, based on our rules, you cannot ship over bulk precursors for drugs unless you're a pharmaceutical company. So one of the precursors used for methamphetamines, which is meth, a major drug, that is required, can be bought in India in bulk. And so what these guys did is that they went to Mumbai, they purchased a huge amount of the precursor in bulk, and then they shipped it over here. So in other words, long as it gets shipped from a country that permits it, it's not a problem. So you can't just buy it here, but you can ship it from another country here. So these gangsters were involved in shipping large-scale precursors, thousands of kilograms, to Canada, which was subsequently used by Asian organized crime for their meth labs, to create meth and to sell that and distribute that on the streets. Those guys were busted in Mumbai when the Mumbai police worked together in conjunction with Canadian authorities, and now those guys are now sitting in jail in Mumbai.
Another phenomena that has been disturbing for a lot of analysts in the past, at least with respect to the last 2 years, is there seems to be, and I may be corrected here, but there seems to be a growing nexus between, say, the erstwhile Khalistani separatists, the underworld in the Punjab and in Canada. Would you agree with that assessment?
There is no evidence to suggest to me that there is a possible correlation between the two. I can only talk from my perspective, with respect to my experience in law enforcement, when it comes to South Asians that are involved in the gang and drug life. And yes, there is a connection between India and Canada when it comes to some of these gangsters and organized crime groups working together.
I think we've pretty much gone over all connections. One gang that I was fascinated with that took me by surprise was the independent soldiers, which seems to have been composed of people who are expressly immigrant students. Is that does that ring a bell? I've been reading about this group over there.
The independent soldiers have a lot of South Asians. So does the UN gang. So do the Red Scorpions. So do the Brothers Keepers. Many of the gangs have very strong representation from the South Asian community. But the gang that you're talking about in particular is called the Ruffians.
Oh,
the Ruffians,
that
they operate out of the Fraser Valley here in British Columbia. And a lot of them are composed of international students that have immigrated to Canada under work visas or under student visas.
Okay. My earlier impression was that these were students who had created such an organization and perhaps they were returning back, but that doesn't seem to be the case. A lot of them probably are staying back in Canada. Do you see that happening?
You will not believe how many international students have been arrested here and deported back. You will not believe the number. It is absolutely astronomical. Our jails have a lot of international students that have been charged with criminal offenses that are now awaiting their sentencing and deportation back to India.
What do you think the future holds? All my readings present a very grim picture, and a lot of these issues, they take time. It's not over in just say a couple of months or years, maybe a couple of years. How do you see the present scenario evolving over, say, the next couple of years or maybe the next decade?
I'm disgusted. I really am, because the thing is, I just want to explain to these international students that become engaged in this sort of stuff here is that my parents immigrated to this country the same way. And they worked 2, 3 jobs to make ends meet and raise their family. And they worked hard without complaint. And these kids are looking for easy money. They go into the drug life, they sell these drugs, they destroy communities, destroy lives. I just want to say to every single international student that's involved in this kind of criminal lifestyle is that smarten up. You come to this country for a better life, and your parents sold off their lands and sent you here with the hopes and ambitions that you'll create a better life for yourself and eventually for the family as a whole someday. And it is your responsibility to come to this country, work hard, contribute, give back, and be a productive citizen of society. And if you think making easy money is an easy way out, you will suffer serious consequences and repercussions, such as either going to jail or being shot and killed in the drug life.
My last question, Cal, and this is more with regard to the Punjab and India. In the recent times, a lot of India has seen a lot of student politicians, particularly from the Punjab, evolving into dreaded gangsters. Today, there's this boy called Lawrence Bishnoi, who's one of the most wanted people, or rather most dreaded. He's already in jail. He was, in fact, behind the recent killing of the singer Sidhu Moosewala. What kind of an effect, or has there been some effect? What have you heard since the death of the singer? Like, have you heard? Has there been some conversation in Canada with regard to it, about his songs or his death? I'm just curious about that, and that is essentially my last question.
Yeah, with respect to any of the gangsters that are operating in India, trust me, they bear no relevance here other than their very soft connection to some of the organized crime groups here. But there is no fear of individuals like Goldie Brar or Lawrence Bishnoi. They might consider themselves big gangsters in India, but that's not the case here. You know what? What they need to understand is that they might be able to get away with a lot of stuff in India on account of systemic corruption in some cases. That's not going to be the case here. They need to understand that this criminal justice system is very strongly bolstered and reinforced with tight resolve in order to pursue charges against individuals like that and send them to jail indefinitely.